that the United States government is keeping the information secret. Former Air Force officers and an investigator are here with their stories. Here in Los Angeles is Robert Hastings. He's author of UFOs and Nukes. Alice is a former captain, U.S. Air Force Base. You have the former U.S. Air Force officer. He was at Maelstrom as well in 1967, and he says his superiors told him UFOs caused the malfunctions. And in Peoria, Illinois, is Dr. Bob Jacobs, former First Lieutenant, U.S. Air Force, former U.S. Air Force photographic instrumentation officer. A UFO showed up on film that he shot in 1964 at Vandenberg Air Force Base, and that was later confiscated by CIA. Hastings, how did you get, what's your explanation for UFOs at nuclear weapon sites?
I can simply say after 35 years of research that these incidents have taken place. There are hundreds of declassified documents which indicate that UFOs have demonstrated a distinct and ongoing interest in our nuclear weapon sites. I've also interviewed nearly 100 gentlemen who were involved in these incidents at various Air Force bases. This is very widespread. What you're seeing here this evening is the tip of the iceberg.
How do they cause a malfunction? What do they do to cause something to not work?
I think that's probably still an unknown. I know that Boeing engineers attempted to duplicate some of the malfunctions. They did succeed in doing that, but they still can't determine what initially caused them. Bob Salas could address that.
Bob, what happened at Maelstrom in 1967?
1967, I was on duty as a missile launch officer. I get calls from my guards upstairs. First, I get one call saying that they're seeing strange lights flying in the sky, and I didn't pay too much attention to that. About 5 minutes later, the main security guard, the flight security controller, calls down, says he's looking at a glowing red object, very large, hovering over the front gate. He wants to know what to do. I tell him to secure the facility. We hang up. I go to tell my commanders. So within seconds of that call, my missiles start shutting down. I recall losing all 10 of them.
You didn't see the object?
I didn't see the object because I was obliged to stay underground in the capsule.
By shutting down, we mean what?
By shutting down, what I mean is they were not launchable. They were in a no-go condition, disabled.
How long to restart them?
How long to restart? Well, I'm sure it took over a day, and maybe...
All right. Now, Bob Jamison, you were there too, right?
Yes, sir.
And you were in the Air Force?
Yes, I was in the Air Force.
And where were you when this was happening?
I was a targeting officer, missile targeting officer. I was at home relaxing, and I got a call from Job Control to tell them to come in. A missile had gone down. My job as a targeting officer was to bring him back up. And so I went into...
So you didn't see the incident, you just went to the missile?
I went to the incident. I went to the site.
Where is Maelstrom?
It's Great Falls, Montana, just outside of Great Falls, Montana.
What did you make of the story?
Well, I know that it's true. I went into Job Control after I got to the hangar. I was called in, went to the hangar, went to the Job Control, and I noticed they have a map of the whole complex with green lights where the missiles were good, but there's one small area with 10 red lights. I mean, those missiles were out.
Is it possible they just malfunctioned?
That doesn't happen. Very rarely does a missile malfunction, and I don't think any... Much more rare would be 2 at the same time, but never 10.
Now, Bob Jacobs, where were you? What were you filming, and where were you?
I was officer in charge of optical instrumentation at Vandenberg Air Force Base from 1963 to 66.
That's
our job
California?
was to photograph. That's California, so right there on the coast. Right. And our job was to photograph with high-speed instrumentation every missile launch from Vandenberg going down the test range. They wanted to find out if we could figure out a place to put a telescope where we could get a side view of the missile so that we could see all 3 stages of powered flight. So I went up to Big Sur, California, up on a U.S. Forest Service road on Anderson Peak, and I installed a telescopic sight up there. The Air Force flew in a huge catadioptric telescope from the Cape. It was built by Dr. Walter Manning at Boston University. They put the telescope up there, and with that thing, which had a focal length of 2,500 inches, we photographed an Atlas missile raising up out of the fog cover and flying downrange. We got all 3 stages of powered flight, and as the dummy warhead and the package flew on down range, we were all celebrating the fact that we had seen the thing and accomplished the mission. When I got back to the base with the film the next day, I was called into the office of Major Florence J. Mansman, And there were 3 people in gray suits standing in there. There was a 16mm camera and a screen set up. Major Mansman said, "Lieutenant, sit down and watch this." And he turned down the lights, turned on the camera, on the projector, and the film came on. And I recognized it as the film that we'd shot at Big Sur the previous day. Toward the end of the flight, I was looking at Major Mansman saying, "Pretty good stuff, huh, sir?" And suddenly he said, "Just watch this." And as I watched, the warhead, the dummy warhead, the chaff that was put out in front of it as a decoy to deflect the Russian anti-missile tracking radar. Everything was flying along, and suddenly, in the same direction this stuff was flying at about 8,000 miles an hour, an object came into the frame, shot a beam of light at the warhead, flew up to the top, shot another beam of light at the warhead, flew around the direction it was flying, shot another beam of light at the warhead, flew down, shot another beam of light at the warhead, and flew out the same way it came in.
The U.S. government does not obviously appreciate people such as myself and these gentlemen speaking out about this. What we're describing on an ongoing basis, decade after decade, at multiple Air Force bases, is disruption of our nuclear missiles.
We have an email from Kyle in Plainville, Massachusetts. Why would UFOs only disable U.S. defense systems and not another country? Is there a lesson to be learned in all this? Or do you think maybe, Bob Salas, they have disabled other countries?
They have. I know that there have been events in the Soviet Union where they have interfered there. They've been seen in just any country you can name, and they do disable communications, especially.
We have an email from Eric in Atlanta, Georgia. What can be done, if anything, to force the U.S. government and/or military to declassify and release all it knows about UFOs? Dr. Jacobs, when do you think that would happen? Do you think that would happen?
It would take a revolution in public opinion. The problem with this field is that it's surrounded by so many crackpots and weirdos who make a joke about it, that those of us who take it seriously and think that something is definitely going on that needs to be scientifically investigated are laughed at. The technician here in the studio where I am, I said we were talking about UFOs tonight, and her face lit up, and she got that kind of look, which is typical of what happens to us. I think that we need a real scientific committee to be put together to look into these things. I think Robert can talk to this too.
Absolutely.
Bob Salas, you agree?
Yeah, I would like to make a comment real quick. The Air Force has perpetrated a fraud, especially in our case. They claim in their statement about UFOs that no UFO incident has ever affected national security, and we lost 20 missiles during the Cold War. They also stonewalled the Condon Committee at that time. The Condon Committee had heard about our incident and were told to go away. They said they were told that no UFOs were involved. And then the Air Force turns around and uses the Condon Committee as a reason not to further investigate UFOs.
Robert Hastings, in doing all these shows, what confounds me is, if all this is true, what are they afraid of? What's the government afraid of?
Victor Marchetti is a former high-level CIA official. He wrote the book CIA and the Cult of Intelligence in 1975, bestseller. CIA tried to prohibit that being printed. Victor Marchetti in 1979 wrote an article regarding what the CIA thought about UFOs. He alluded to rumors at the agency of crashed UFOs and the recovery of bodies of aliens. More to the point, Victor Marchetti said that, in his view as an intelligence analyst, he thinks that the power structures, the elite, the status quo people in every country on earth who are in on the secret are really trying to maintain their own power and status and don't want to rock the boat.
Email from Christian, Brighton, Colorado. When is the Air Force going to stop lying to the people and finally tell them the truth about alien visitation? The American people are paying their salaries, and they are supposed to defend and respect the Constitution of the United States of America. Bob Jameson, do you think we'll ever see it? Do you think we'll ever see an Air Force official, Secretary of the Air Force, come on and say, here's the story?
Perhaps through more programs such as this, we can get the public tuned to the fact that there are UFOs. They're not going to hurt you, I don't think. They haven't hurt anybody that I know of. And I think that perhaps through more programs such as yours and such as these people are bringing out.
And a government investigation.
And
an open investigation.
There's never been one, right?
Right.
Not really, no. I mean, in 1968 was the last congressional hearing on UFOs, 1968.